Hello and welcome to another Looney Tunes commentary. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing as it helps out the channel, and give this video a like if you do like it. So this is a commentary for Daffy Duck and the Dinosaur, released in 1939. It's the 239th in the series, and it's directed by Chuck Jones. You can find this on the Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 3 DVD set. However, if you want to see it in high definition like you are right now, it's on the HBO Max streaming service. And with me today is special guest Eli Copperman. Say hi.
Hello, folks. Eli Copperman is here. Well, I don't know if I'm here mentally because it is a crazy time right now in November because of the elections. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about cartoons.
That's right. And I like this one before any of your people were even born. I've always loved that
Well,
introduction.
At least before either of us were born.
I'm assuming so, and it's funny as well that the one commentary that comes up on your election day was "It's an ill wind." So I'm telling everyone it was a pure coincidence. Okay, but let's talk about the cartoon. He's the caveman who's, I believe, you can correct me here, that's a Jack Benny caricature. Am I
Yes,
correct?
that is Jack. Well, that's a Jack Benny caricature, but like the actual caveman himself, I believe, was voiced by a guy named Jack Lescooly. And what's kind of interesting, like this period, this was like what Chuck Jones' early period. I remember having a conversation with a good friend of mine, Luke Perkins, in that. Well, although a lot of these like early Chuck cartoons aren't, what we think of like the typical ha funny cartoons, a lot of them, I would argue, are actually, some of them at least, are actually not that bad if you just look at them as visual stories.
Yeah, I love this gag. I have to point out this gag. Sorry, this one is the gag I always use for my kids. I always do the whole shh, be quiet. And they get a kick out of it. So I had to point that out. It's a favorite gag of mine. But please continue.
Yeah, like this, I think this one he was kind of trying to, like, I don't want to say like pay a tribute to Tex, but definitely like try to imitate Tex's, style of comedy. And it's not quite there yet. You can tell the timing's fairly slow, but this, I would argue, is probably the funniest cartoon he made early on in his career. I agree. I don't think he made anything quite as funny as this until, at the very least, maybe the Draft Horse, and maybe there's another one. But like the funny thing, but like the funny thing is, like a lot of those like other earlier Chuck cartoons that try to be funny, they're pathetic.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be getting many different guests, as people would know by now, if they're following the channel, and just getting their different perspectives. My good friend Chase, he absolutely loves them, and he gave his perspective. So it's interesting to see how some love him and some don't. Me, I'm sort of in the middle. I like some, kind of, sort of like some. I don't know. But I love the animation here, by the way, of this dinosaur. Just absolutely, just so rubbery, but it's so good. Do you know who would have animated this? Oh, I should have probably.
I'm not really sure who animated either who, but the only credited animator here, AC Gamer, and I actually like sent you this. What's interesting is that AC Gamer, even though he was credited here, he was more of an effects animator than like an actual character animator. And like they had this weird standard back then where they would only credit 4 people on screen, and like at first it was like two animators, one the director and the music composer, and then it changed to like 1 story guy and 1 animator. And it's kind of odd. I'm not saying like Gamer didn't deserve the credit or anything, but considering that he mostly did effects work, it's definitely kind of fascinating.
Oh, look, absolutely, especially in some of the Frank Tash and Porky Pigs. He did like the opening of that scary one that he did. That, oh, I forgot what it was called, but it's one of his best anyway. But he's done a lot there. But just that knot gag, just absolutely ridiculous. But do we know much more about Jack Lescooly? I mean, this is the first time I've seen him like doing anything on a Warner Brothers cartoon. So
aside from doing some 50s and 60s broadcasts of the NBC show Today, it says that he was also just really known for his Jack Benny impersonation, which, not that that's better or anything, but when that's kind of all you're known for, it might not be the best filmography that you've got.
Of course.
This part right here, I don't know why, but because it gets me.
Yeah, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Because I'm looking at his filmography, and he's only credited on like 11 things, and only one of which seems to be a cartoon, which is of course this one. But I don't know. I like this caveman one, and I've seen a lot of people actually not really liking this short for whatever reason. But I think it's great. I mean,
yeah. Again, if you look at these like interesting like early attempts at, I guess, like trying to imitate Texas humor and maybe not quite hitting the mark, but still like experimenting, they're not that bad. And
exactly.
And those
right.
backgrounds too, like those are watercolors, right?
Yep. At this point, there would be. And these are like 30s ads sort of knockoff. I think one's like a cigarette ad or something that's coming up. I'm just trying to think. If there's like things like 2 for 1 or whatever. That's from a cigarette ad. Golden Duck Discovery. Okay. This one, with Caveman, it's Ducky's 2 to 1. It's some weird little gag, but
I think like if this were like done later on, like the music would have been a lot more snappy and would have been done in like maybe 10 seconds and with fewer signs. But it's still an interesting build-up. It's a little pretentious, but once you see this behemoth, it makes so much sense.
Oh, exactly. It's a perfect gag at the end. And Chuck would actually revisit the whole billboard signage thing in his Hunter trilogy when of course Daffy is putting up signs, but he's of course a lot more meaner in there. Look at the expression on that big duck. Just look at it.
It looks like he's ready to kill them. And funny enough, it does.
Literally. So with the cartoon nearly over, definitely stick around, guys, because me and Eli are going to just have a nice little chat. So I don't know how he's strumming that harp so well, but we'll go for it. We love the whole cartoon logic.
It's a cartoon, Doc. You don't need to think about it. You just gotta laugh.
That's right. But that's the end.
Woo! Nice.
And we're back. Hooray!
Hey.
We watched one of the, like we said in the commentary track, one of the better Chuck Jones efforts of the 30s. It's one I grew up with. I mean, it's one that you grew up with. It's one of your ones that you enjoyed watching.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's like a personal favorite, but it's kind of like a nostalgic favorite, so to speak. Like it's rewatching it now, obviously, like when you compare it to later efforts, it doesn't quite hold up in terms of the comedic timing that Chuck would later be known for. But as like, I think it's actually a good way to get people introduced to Daffy Duck. Like if you've never seen a single Daffy Duck cartoon, this one's actually a pretty good pick because it actually establishes like, yeah, he's zany, he's wacky, and he'll mess with you. And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Tex was interested in making this, but for some reason they gave it to Chuck instead.
It seems like it, yeah. I mean, for a short that's you can tell, yeah, like, as you mentioned in the track, and I agree with you that it looks like he's him trying to be like Tex when he's not. But yet he's still more effective in this cartoon than Ben Hardaway trying to be like Tex in like Porky's Hare Hunt.
That cartoon is embarrassment.
Yeah, I mean it was him trying to be like the cartoon Porky's Duck Hunt. Funny how the two main characters in Looney Tunes are introduced by hunting, but anyway, we'll just go with that. But it's just so bizarre. But when Ben Hardaway tries to do it, it's just he doesn't understand what makes things work. How Tex Avery can make something work. I mean, what do you think? What went wrong?
To me, and like I've had a lot of these discussions about Ben Hardaway with some friends and all. He was a good gag man, but as the director, there was just something about him that kind of lacked. And I think that's part of it's funny when Friz Freeling would later come back to Warner Brothers and sort of like take back his unit. Ben was pretty upset over that, and I can understand why. But his I don't know, like his not all his efforts at directing were bad, but a lot of them I feel like they tried harder to be wacky than actually funny, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Because the previous commentary, so the one that would have come out yesterday, as in when I put all these in order for release on YouTube, it was Bars and Stripes Forever. So, and which I think is a great one, that
I
Hardaway.
love that
And
cartoon.
yeah, so there was certainly capable of good work, but for whatever reason, when they try to be like Tex Avery, they just, I don't know, failed, at least in my opinion
Yeah.
so far. But the year's not over yet, so maybe there might be a little surprise. I don't know, but I'm not getting my hopes up. But one of the reasons that people might be wondering, why am I asking so many people about early Chucks? Why am I getting so many guests to discuss these with me? Is that I am really, really curious about people's thoughts on the earlier stuff, because the general consensus is that they're all quote unquote bad. But I think there's more to it. So going through them so far, I mean, what are your thoughts on his first effort, like the Night Watchman?
Okay, that one I can definitely see why Chuck would later disown it and say that's pretty boring. But it's I don't know, like even then, like it's really not that terrible. Like it's just kind of like another like Silly Symphonies clone, or well, maybe not so Silly Symphonies clone, but like kind of more of like him trying to be Disney-esque. And it's interesting, like apparently Chuck in real life was a lot colder than a lot of those Disney attempts that he made. But the Night Watchman, it's it kind of is what it is at the end of the day. And then I guess there's also Doggone Modern, which
That's the next one. Yep.
yeah, I kind of like that one just for like the visual gags, even though it's not that great. Um, and then there was Presto Changeo, which that one was definitely a lot funnier. It actually like this time that there were actually a few gags mixed in there, and I guess also because this time he actually tried to use that Bugs Bunny prototype, which wasn't fully realized yet, but by any means. But what's funny is that I find that cartoon a lot funnier than Porky's Hare Hunt.
Oh yeah, yeah. I definitely agree. I mean, because I have seen that one before, and it's it's one of those shorts where like it just proves once again, just like now with this cartoon, that Chuck was just better at certain things than Hardaway was, which it's funny, interesting. When I'm watching all these in order, that's I'm not noticing certain patterns and trends, but you know, um, but yeah, people might be wondering, of course, who you are. I've been, of course, wanting to get people to introduce. So yeah, tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you've done, and
A
yeah.
lot of freelance work. But no. I'm like, so basically, like having like grown up a lot with animation, whether it be movies or cartoons, that's pretty much led me to want to become an animator myself. And what's interesting is that because like I'm in college right now. At the time we were recording this, I'm in the pre-production phase of my thesis film. And what I find really interesting is that my artwork and like my personal like character design sensibilities, which I don't consider great, but by any means, but a lot of them sometimes when I look back at my influences, they do like one of them like does range from like this time period because you see that they're still like favoring that more like I don't want to say cutesy, but like kind of like exaggerated squash and stretch stuff, which they haven't perfected just yet, but they're starting to experiment more. Like one that I'll always go back to is Porky and Wacky Land, just for the sheer insanity of it, and the insane use of imagination too. I
Oh, it's a
think
masterpiece. Yeah, definitely a
yeah.
masterpiece.
So yeah, in many ways, these cartoons really like leveled me up to where I am today, not just in terms of style, but also humor. Like, my Who Framed Roger Rabbit is like my dad and I's like that's our favorite movie. We'll always quote it and like mention it a lot. I even have it on DVD over there for funny enough. So in many
Oh,
ways,
it's
like a
it's a
lot of these,
masterpiece. Definitely a masterpiece.
yeah. So in many ways, like these cartoons really brought me up to where I am now. And so when I look back at all of them, it's really fascinating when you have such a big variety of these cartoons. I think that's part of the appeal for Looney Tunes, at least to me, because like you get to something that's really funny, and then you get something that's like maybe not laugh out loud funny, but it's like it's a good visual story piece, and it's got some good music, and of course like it was all part of the experimental process, which in many ways is what we're doing at my college. Like we're experimenting a lot through like
Yeah.
storytelling, soundtracks, layouts, editing, all that stuff. Does every attempt work? No, but you learn. You learn
Well, that's
so
right. As I would have learned probably from Porky's Hare Hunt, which you're probably using in your college, what not to do. What
yeah,
not to
no,
do.
make a character funny, not annoying.
So yeah, any final thoughts on the Daffy Duck and the Dinosaur? I mean, we mentioned it's a nostalgic favorite. Well, nostalgic. It's a favorite nostalgic wise. But any final thoughts?
I mean, overall, like I still thoroughly enjoy it to this day. There's a good amount of like even the like not just the gags, but I even mentioned the backgrounds, and they're like done in that watercolor style. No idea why, but whenever I think of a cartoon that's very colorful without being overly saturated, one that comes to mind is this. Because there's a pretty fairly limited color palette in this, from like the greens and the purples and the sky. And yet that's really appealing at the same time. I don't know what it is. I guess it's just those nice little details that can really make a cartoon that much more enjoyable from multiple viewings.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and I wonder if that was the reason why in the Disney movie Lilo and Stitch they actually went back and did watercolors instead of the usual. I suppose I think it was the caps painting or something. I'm not sure what the system it was, but they went to watercolor and it's absolutely amazing. I watched it for the first time in a while actually the other day with my kids, and yeah, I was just taken aback at those watercolors, and I definitely think you're onto something with this cartoon, and it's even better in high definition. So. But we just need Warner's to actually release this thing on Blu-ray along with all the other high definition ones.
That'd
But
be nice. Yes,
I have
especially.
I have my ways of getting them.
Well, either way, like especially if you're watching them in comparison to those public domain prints, which, funny enough, I actually once watched this cartoon. You can find it on YouTube. It's
Yeah.
an 8 millimeter print of the cartoon, and it's technically really bad quality, but it's kind of enjoyable to watch in that regard, just to see like an old retro scan, you know.
And for nostalgia too, I guess, because that's how I probably would have seen it, like in this really worn out VHS tape of some, I think it was like a Donald Duck, not Donald, Daffy Duck tape. Although being a crappy little thing, might have featured all sorts of ducks, including Donald. So there you go. But we'll leave it at that. But yeah, if you're happy to come along for any other cartoons, you're certainly more than welcome. Guys, let me know in the comments below what other cartoons you would like to see us discuss. I'll leave Eli's details in the description below. But we're going to try and do an impersonation to say bye. So I don't know, should we say like Porky or Bugs?
What about we just quote Daffy and the caveman?
The whole shh, be quiet. Well, I can't do a Jack
No.
Benny impersonation.
The last one. Here, I'll start.
Oh yeah. Good night, folks.
You know what, Mr. Anthony? Maybe this wasn't such a hot idea after all.
Good night, folks. I can't do a Jack Benny. I can't talk like an American. I'm just gonna mix up all the accents together in this real gibberish I'm doing right now. It's like that's a real nothing accent right there. That, believe me, I know. Beautiful. All right, take care, folks. Until next time.
See you, folks. We're not doing Ghost Wanted, but by the way.